You sit on the couch in your small apartment as your 2-year-old daughter, Estelle, colors some of her coloring pages. Do you want any more mac and cheese, Estelle? You ask her. She looks up at you, her green eyes reminding you of a certain mischievous prince sparkling with glee as she smiles brightly. Yes, she says happily. You smile as you get up from the couch, grabbing the small bowl and heading into the kitchen to get her some more mac and cheese. It's been almost 3 years since you started living on Earth, and every time you look at your daughter, you're reminded of your husband, Loki. When you had found out what he had done to Earth and the city of New York, you didn't know what to think of him anymore. You still loved him, of course, but you were hesitant about telling him that you were pregnant with his child. When Thor broke him out of prison, you had plenty of opportunities to tell him, but you couldn't. And when he was killed by the Cursed, it made you regret your decision of not telling him at all. And when Thor decided to return to Earth and stay there to be with his friends and spend more time with Jane, you decided to join him since you couldn't live in the one place that constantly reminded you of Loki and all of the memories of how the two of you fell in love. 6 months later, your daughter was born and all of the Avengers had went to the hospital to see the baby and congratulate you. And while you were in labor, Natasha stayed with you through the whole thing. And as much as you love Natasha and think of her as a sister, you would have rather had Loki there. Your thoughts are broken by the doorbell ringing. You walk out of the kitchen and toward Estelle, where she sits on the floor. Here you are, my love, you say with a smile. She grins as she takes the bowl away from you. Thanks, Mama, she says before taking a bite of the mac and cheese in the bowl. You're very welcome, you smile as you kiss the top of her head. The doorbell rings again and you tell Estelle to stay there while you answer the door. She nods and then continues eating her mac and cheese. You walk up to the door and look through the peephole. You gasp at who is on the other side of the door. Thor. You open the door, your eyes still wide with surprise. Thor? Thor smiles widely at you. Hello, Wyan. You see movement behind him and you look at Thor in confusion. He steps to the side, revealing Loki, to whom glares at Thor for a moment before turning to you and smiling softly. Hello, love. You can't help it. You lunge at him, but Thor grabs you by the waist and holds you against his chest, restraining you from attacking Loki. Almost 3 years! It's been almost 3 years and you made me think you were dead that whole time, and all you say to me is, hello, love? You exclaim as you struggle against Thor's grip. Wyan, that is enough. We are not here for this, Thor says sternly, and you reluctantly stop struggling in his grip. He lets you go, but still stands in between you and Loki just in case. You huff irritably. Fine. What are you two doing here, anyway? What happened? You ask. It's a long story, says Thor. He then gestures to the door. Can we? You hesitate for a second, knowing that Estelle will be wondering who Loki is and why he's with her Uncle Thor, and then you will have to explain that he's her father. You nod. Sure. Follow me, you say softly as you enter your apartment with the 2 men following close behind you. The 3 of you enter the living room and Estelle turns her head and grins at the sight of Thor. She gets up and runs towards him while exclaiming, Uncle Thor! Thor chuckles as he kneels down and picks her up, giving her a big hug. Look at how you've grown, says Thor as he hugs her. As they hug, you feel Loki's eyes on you, and you know that he's wondering why a little girl is calling Thor her uncle. You turn to where her mac and cheese bowl lays on the coffee table, pick it up, and walk towards the kitchen to rinse it off and then put it in the dishwasher. As you rinse off the bowl, you'll feel Loki standing behind you. Is she yours? He asks softly. You gulp as tears gather in your eyes. You take a deep breath before turning your head so that you can see him in the corner of your eye, and nod, softly saying, Yes, she is. He looks down at the ground, disappointment in his green eyes. I see. He then looks back at you, his green eyes connecting to yours. Who is the father? You turn away from him, placing the small bowl in the dishwasher. You don't see it, do you? You ask him as you turn to him. He looks confused. What could you possibly... You cut him off. You're her father, Loki, you say angrily with tears starting to roll down your cheeks as you look him in the eyes. Who else would be? Why didn't you tell me? He asks softly. I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how you would have reacted since you were imprisoned, you say angrily. He looks down at the ground again. I'm so sorry, love, he says. Yes, well, saying that you're sorry now will not help you since you missed the first 2 years of your daughter's life, you say as you storm out of the kitchen and back into the living room. Thor hands you Estelle and you sit on the couch with her on your lap. Mama? She asks you. Yes, my love, you ask her with a small smile. Who is that man over there? She asks, turning to where Loki stands and pointing her little hand at him. You and Loki look at each other in surprise before she turns back to you. Well, he's your father, Estelle, you say. Her eyes widen in surprise as she looks at Loki again. She then looks back at you as if silently asking you if she can go to him, and you nod before setting her down on the ground. She immediately runs to him and hugs Loki's leg, making him look at her in surprise. He looks at you and you nod with a small smile on your face, giving him permission to hug her. He then hesitantly kneels down in front of her, with a small smile on his face. Hello, little one, he says as he brushes her bangs out of her eyes. Estelle grins and then wraps her little arms around his neck, making his eyes widen again. Daddy, she says against his neck as she hugs him. Loki looks at you before slowly wrapping his arms around her, holding her against his body. You tear up slightly from the sight of the two of them hugging. You always had a small shimmer of hope that she would meet her father in some way, even if he was dead. After the two of them let go, Estelle comes to you again and you pick her up. You kiss her on the top of the head and smile as she leans against your chest and continues staring at Loki with a giant smile on her face. Loki's green eyes meet yours and you give each other genuine smiles. Well, now that we got that out of the way, says Thor, making you and Loki look at him, we can now tell you why we are here. You nod. Of course. Let me just take her to bed first. It's time for her nap anyway, you say, looking down at Estelle as she tries so hard to keep her little eyes open. The two men nod and you stand up from the couch with Estelle in your arms, taking her to her bedroom so that she can take her nap. You enter her bedroom and put her down on the bed under the covers, getting her settled in for her nap. Little did you know that Thor was trying to convince Loki to talk to you. As you settle Estelle under the covers for her nap, you hear quiet footsteps behind you, which make you turn around to see Loki standing in the doorway. You give him a small smile before turning back to Estelle, who just closed her eyes. You feel the bed go down beside you, and you know that Loki is sitting next to you looking at Estelle. Why did you do it? You ask softly as you brush Estelle's hair out of her face. Why did you fake your death? You hear Loki sigh before you feel a hand on your knee, which makes you turn to him and look into his green eyes, waiting for an explanation. I know I have hurt you, love, but I had no other choice, he says. If you didn't have a choice, then why did you do it? You ask. I wanted to keep you safe, Loki replies softly. Safe from what? You ask, confused. He hesitates for a second before answering. Thanos. Your eyes widen at the name. Of course you know who Thanos is. Basically everyone in the universe knows who Thanos is. Thanos, the Mad Titan, as many people call him. Now you understand why Loki acted like a different person during the attack of New York, according to Thor, and during his time in prison. He had went through so much torture, and Thanos had convinced him that his whole family had despised him, not just Odin. He used Loki's anger as a weapon and used it against him. You look up at him. I forgive you, you say softly. He looks up at you in surprise at that. Now that I know that you wanted to protect me from Thanos and his wrath, you continue as you grab his hand and give it a reassuring squeeze. Thank you, he says to you softly. You smile and kiss him on the lips gently, to which Loki stiffens for a moment before kissing you back just as softly. You let go of his lips a moment later and press your forehead against his, looking into his bright green eyes. He cups your face in his hands, which makes you close your eyes as you lean into his touch. I have missed you so much, love, he says to you softly. You open your eyes again and smile at him. I have missed you too, you say. He smiles before kissing your forehead gently. I love you, he says. I love you too. Loki then stands up from the bed, giving you his hand to take. Shall we? He asks. You giggle as you take his hand in yours, standing up from the bed, him leading you to the door before he quietly closes it behind the two of you. The two of you come back into the living room to find Thor looking at the two of you with a smug look on his face. I see the two of you are getting along now, he says, nodding to your intertwined fingers. You and Loki look at each other, let go of each other's hands, and blush madly, which makes Thor chuckle. The two of you sit down and Thor starts explaining as to what had happened over the last 2 years since the Ultron incident, to which you couldn't participate in since you were 8 months pregnant at the time. After Thor tells you the story and that he and Loki are here to find Odin, you point them in the direction of the retirement home where Loki says he had left Odin, which is down the street from your apartment. As the three of you say your goodbyes, Estelle comes out of her room, rubbing her eyes tiredly. You smile at her as you pick her up. How is your nap, my love? You ask her as you adjust her so that she's on your hip. She leans her head on your shoulder and mumbles, Okay. You smile at Loki and Thor as they bid both of you farewell. You tell Estelle to wave bye to them, which she does tiredly. Now that you think about it, you're glad that Thor came to you and showed you that Loki was alive, since he got the chance to see his daughter for the first time.